Dear audience, dear Audrey, it is great to virtually for now meet you all. Traditionally, I would like to remind you that the session is recorded. So once you have given consent to participate to the journal, we have taken notice of this, and we would like to tell you that we will process the data you have included in the registration form, as well as we'll record the session and upload it on our YouTube channel. Before proceeding further with the fifth session, I would like to remind you that we have the translation services on Zoom platform from Romanian to English, so please feel free to use them. In case there are attendees who are participating at our event for the first time, please note that we have on Association's YouTube channel all 4 previous sessions listed, so please feel free to access them anytime you want. All the sessions are exclusively led by Audrey Scott, who is a tourism and marketing strategist. I would say already a good connoisseur of the specifics from the tourism industry for Moldova, and who during the first sessions presented the most relevant and the leading travel marketing and digitalization trends recommendations based on relevant statistics and tools, which can be used in the area of marketing and promotion of the tourism companies. Today, Audrey will stress on the opportunities SEO offers to the tourism professionals and to the tourism businesses, of course, and in particular, the ways in which well-structured travel website content can help, on the one hand, convert the website visitors into customers, and on the other hand, why it is good for the SEO itself. The activity is implemented by our association, by Antrim, with the support of our strategic partner, who is the USAID Edge Buy-in in Moldova Competitiveness Transition Activity. With this being said, I would like to give the floor to Audrey.
Thank you. And it's hard to believe this is the 5th journal. So thank you for that lovely introduction, Ina. I'm going to share my screen. And as I do, I just want to make sure that everyone is able to access the translation, the interpretation into Romanian. So if you have any problems, please use the chat to indicate that. Okay, so I hope at this point everyone can see the screen. This is the standard for every Zoom presentation these days.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Audrey Scott. I am a tourism and marketing strategist, and I am working as an advisor on the Moldovan Competitiveness Transition Activity, which is a very long name. It's funded by USAID, and I've been working very closely with Antrim for the last year already on projects related to marketing, product development, and as well as training and capacity building. So these business journals focus on kind of the building business skills, and also looking at what information and what skills and what tools tourism businesses in Moldova can use, especially focused on international tourists. Now, I know that the last couple of years have been quite challenging regarding international tourism with the pandemic and also the war in Ukraine. But at the same time, now that the summer season is over, hopefully things are becoming a little bit quieter for tourism businesses. It is a good time to reflect and to think about the future. And hopefully next summer, there will be an upswing and there will be a focus on international tourism next year. Let's hope there's peace in the region. Let's hope there's a lot of things that have changed before next summer season. And so that's why today's session is focused on quality travel content that's online. And I'm going to specifically focus on your websites, and why developing this and really focusing on this now gives your business, also gives Moldova as a destination an advantage in the future, because it takes time to create. It takes time in order for Google to find it. It takes time for travelers to figure out, oh, I want to go to Moldova. I want to start researching. I want to plan. And so we're going to go through all of that today. So we're also going to talk about how quality online travel content isn't just good for travelers, but it's also good for search engine optimization, which means that you're able to reach more target customers or more potential customers easier. So first, what is the goal of quality online travel content? I mean, it's a lot of work. I think it's fun, but not everyone thinks it's fun. But it is work and it does take time. So why are we even thinking about this? What are the goals of it? And it's really related to attracting your target market to your website via content and search. And so this means, and we're going to talk more about why it's so important to think about your target market. But it's about creating the right content. So that way, when your potential customer is out there searching online for their next vacation, they find your website and they create that connection. It's also about developing trust through quality and comprehensive content. And this is important everywhere, but especially for a destination like Moldova. It's not very well known, which is one of the things which a lot of people like about it, because it's like they're going somewhere new, they're going somewhere different. And there's more of a trend in the last year, especially coming from the pandemic, to go to more uncrowded places or less visited places. But at the same time, the downside is there isn't the same amount of information on Moldova as there is on Italy or France, and especially specific destinations in Moldova or what to do in Moldova. And so there's still this uncertainty of, I even have my friends, I've been to Moldova twice, and everyone keeps asking me, like, I know nothing about Moldova, what would I do? And so this is where having quality content online, as people start searching, they heard about Moldova, maybe they want to go online. This is something that helps build that trust and also creates like, oh yeah, this is a place I want to visit. And ultimately, this helps move your potential customers from interest in visiting Moldova to actually visiting Moldova and purchasing or buying your services. So that's the goal. And this is, I didn't name this session content marketing, but this is the basics of content marketing. It's using high quality content to respond and answer the questions and needs of your target market in order to build that trust and in order to sell to them. Because especially with travel, it's expensive, it takes time. So it sometimes takes multiple, let's say, interactions to get to that point. So what we're going to learn today is, before we talk about anything related to content, we're going to learn about the importance of understanding your target market and their key questions or their key needs and how your content can respond to this. We're also going to look at how online travel content not only can inspire, it can make people dream and think about all the things they can do in Moldova, but it can also inform them to tell them how to do it. And ultimately, the goal is to sell your services or to sell the destination to them, to spur action, to have them take action from your content. And ultimately, this is also good for search engine optimization, meaning it's easier for people to find your content, your websites, your companies in Google, as well as travelers, because it answers all the questions that a traveler might have about Moldova or your specific guest house or your winery. You know, when are the wine tours? What are the specialties? Or your tours? Why is this company's tour different than this company's tour? So it helps them understand the specifics and how to match that information with their interests and what they want to do. And the focus today is on websites, but everything that I'm talking about actually also applies to your other online profiles. So whether it's your Facebook page, whether it's your Instagram, whether it's your Google Maps profile, all of this information applies to that, because more and more people are using multiple online profiles to get information about a place. So, sorry. But first, I mean, I know, for example, some people say, well, are websites even that important? I believe that websites are important for a company, especially when focusing on international tourists. But if you don't have a website, there's also, you know, social media platforms, people are using multiple things. But I just wanted to highlight here all the different places that a tourist might find your website. So for example, on search, if someone is searching for what to do in Moldova or guest houses near Lalova or accommodation at a winery, they might find your website. Word of this one at the bottom, which you can't see, this is word of mouth recommendation. I posted on my personal Facebook page when I returned from Moldova last time. And actually Moldovans started asking me about travel information, like especially diaspora, I started getting messages. So this was someone asking, how do you find these guest houses? So again, word of mouth, someone travels, they send a link. Maybe they send a link to your website, your company website. YouTube is an incredible search engine these days. So anytime that there's information about your guest house, or if there's if you're promoting something about your winery, make sure you have a link to your website there and make sure you have information about what you can do at your place, because people are using this more and more. The screenshot that I used there was from the Yes Theory video from Moldova, which I think has close to 4 million views. They weren't promoting Moldova specifically, but they were promoting their travel services. So they have a link to their travel services website on that video. Same with Google Maps. People using Google Maps more and more. When I traveled in Moldova recently, I was partly working on the project and partly I traveled with my husband for a few days on a private trip. Google Maps was really helpful. And to be honest, if a place didn't have a website linked, I usually went to the next guest house just because it was too difficult to go back into my search and try and find it. And so make sure that it's linked, make it easy for people to find you. And same with make sure your website, people find it on your Facebook page, your Instagram page, and also destination websites. So this is a snapshot from the Moldova.travel website where they have a listing of most guest houses in Moldova. So this is, how all these different ways that tourists can find your website. And once they get on your website, the question is, what are they going to find there? Are they going to get the information they need? And are they going to get enough information to answer their questions, to meet their needs, and hopefully to book or to engage with you to book your services? Now, I've talked about the traveler customer lifecycle, I think, in every single business journal, because I think it's really important to understand. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it now because I've just talked about all the different ways that tourists might find your website. But now I want to get into the head of a tourist about what stage or the process that they go through in planning a trip, and how they might engage with your website, with your travel content in all these different stages. So first is the dreaming stage. Someone is thinking about their vacation next year, their vacation next month, and they're thinking, where do I want to go? So maybe they see this Yes Theory video on Moldova, or maybe they have a friend who just visited, or maybe they read an article or see something on TV. That gets them thinking, okay, where do I want to go? There's also online searches where people are looking at, best destinations in 2023. I think we all know these different types of websites that do listings of here's where to go next. Here's, what's the, next wine destination. People use those also for dreaming to plan their trips. Then comes the planning and research. So they have Moldova in their head, and then they think, okay, well, what am I going to do there? Where am I going to go? And that's often when they go online to Google and they start searching for things like things to do in Moldova. It sounds really boring, but this is what people search for. Or where to go in Moldova, or beautiful places in Moldova. And then they start getting a list. Oh, I want to go to Orheveci. And then you think, oh, okay, well, what is there to do in Orheveci? Or what is there to do around Lake Beloi? So this is the planning stage where they start putting together things, and maybe they think, oh, there's some day trips from Chisinau. Maybe I'll stay there and do some day tours to wineries nearby. And so they use Google a lot for their planning, as well as they also use social media. More and more people are going and looking at destination tags or location tags. So they might find your guest house or your winery using these methods as well, and eventually end up on your website. So once they do all the searching, the planning and the research, and this is where your company website can play a big role in helping them understand, like, oh, there's all these things to do, and we can make it easy to do it, whether you're a tour company, winery, guest house. Then comes the booking phase. So that often, again, people go to Google, they start searching because now they have an idea of what they want to do on their trip, but now they need to book it. And so this means sometimes they go directly to OTAs, online travel agents, like booking.com or maybe Viator or Get Your Guide. But more and more people want to book directly with the company because they feel like, okay, that's a direct connection. And also some travelers realize that those companies take commissions. So if they book directly, more money goes to the local company. And so that's, again, when they're also going online looking to say, okay, I know what I want to do. Now I want to choose the companies to book it with. Do I have all the information I need to book it? And can I book it online? And so I think there's been a lot of work recently done in terms of developing these online digital booking platforms, which is great because it provides travelers that ability to book online or to say, I'm going to send an email and ask questions. And we're going to go into a little bit more what type of information on your website helps give that confidence that they want to book with you and that they feel comfortable booking with you, giving you their credit card number, understanding what the cancellation policy is. All these things develop trust in a traveler to actually book. And then there's the experience. They come to Moldova, they're traveling, and yet there's still last minute planning. So often they're on their mobile phone, searching for things to do around, maybe a restaurant, maybe a guest house. I tend to be a traveler that does a lot of last minute travels. So when I was in Moldova, I didn't really plan anything in advance for my personal trip. So I ended up talking to people and I ended up using, I was searching around for what hikes there were in the area, where to stay. And I have to admit, there wasn't as much information as I would have liked. I was fortunate because I had Moldovan colleagues who could help me. But if I were just a normal traveler trying to find information on hikes or even where some of the wineries, which wineries had accommodation and which wineries didn't have accommodation, was actually kind of difficult to find online. So I say that as a person who is an advisor and marketing advisor, but also as a normal traveler. And so that experience makes me realize that, yeah, there's a lot of great information online about Moldova, but considering that it's not a very well-known destination, it's almost like you need to think about what additional information you can give, because a lot of people might not know the things that you think of as, let's say, well, everyone knows that Orheveki is someplace that you visit. Someone coming from Germany or United States wouldn't know this. So to really provide extra information, so that way they experience Moldova to the fullest, but also hopefully engage maybe in more tours and experiences when they're there. Now, I talked a little bit about this at the beginning in terms of why quality online travel content matters. And now that we've talked about the traveler life cycle or journey, one of the things that quality travel content can do is to take someone from the dreaming phase to the actual doing or traveling phase. Because if they get an idea for a destination and then they can't really find any information to help plan it or to make it easy to book, they'll usually move on to the next destination. But if there's quality content that excites them, that inspires them, and that also makes it easy to think, oh yeah, Chisinau, it's only a 2-hour flight from Berlin. I could do this. As opposed to thinking, oh my gosh, Moldova is so far away. How do I get there? Once I get on the ground, what's the transport? So to make all these things that people don't know about Moldova easy to find and also easy to plan, it helps them to go from thinking about traveling to a place to actually traveling to a place. And one of the ways that it does this is by removing obstacles. And it does this by answering their questions and making sure that their needs are addressed. And I'll talk a little bit more about needs of travelers. And this builds trust and confidence in the destination, as well as in the company or in the activity. And as I mentioned, this is especially important for a country like Moldova that isn't as well known as Italy or France or Spain. And people don't know, let's say, a lot about tourism there. So the more information, the more answers, the more kind of, think about Moldovan hospitality, but in online form. It's like, you have a Moldovan meal and there's so much food and there's so much wine. Think about how you can do that in terms of your online content to really provide them with all the information and details you need to develop that confidence, and then also make them really excited to visit. It also makes it easy to plan and book a trip, which is something we talked about before. More and more travelers, and I don't have a slide on this recently, but I was looking up some statistics, and it's expected that online travel sales are expected to grow by, I think, 60% in the next 10 years. So this trend is just only going to be increasing. And the pandemic accelerated it because, again, people want to book in advance, but they also want convenient cancellation. So this is the other side of it. And also online travel, like quality online travel content, encourages more engagement and activities. And what I mean by that is the more people know in advance of what there is to do, or the available services, or even restaurants or wineries in an area, the more likely they are to plan more time there and also engage with it more. Maybe they might hire a local guide. Maybe they might spend an extra day visiting wineries. So the more they know that information in advance, the more they can kind of engage and plan their activities, instead of showing up somewhere and saying, okay, what do I do now? So the goal is to prepare them with information before they arrive, so that way they can get excited about it and hopefully maybe even stay longer. And this also provides an opportunity for different companies to, let's say, sell their services. You provide information, these are the things to do. And if you want, we can provide a guide, or if you want, we can provide transport. We can offer these services to make that happen easier, or to organize it. So that's kind of the main idea with online travel content and content marketing. It's about going from that dreaming phase to that, let's say, traveling purchasing phase, and building trust in a destination and in the company as well. And the first step for kind of developing quality content is to know your target market. Now, this is a bit of a review from the last journal, but it's really important to understand who your target market is and how your website and your products and your marketing are all focused on that target market. And so a target market is a group of customers with shared characteristics. We're going to talk about those shared characteristics in a second, who you've identified as the most likely buyers of your company's product or service. So this means not every tourist in the world, but a very specific type of tourist that's most connected or most aligned with your company, with your brand, with your services, with your style of travel, with your accommodation, with everything that you offer. You can't please everyone, which is actually a good thing, because when you have that focus, you can adjust your products and your marketing, your travel content, to really try and get the customers that you want, or that are best suited for your products. And so knowing your target market and having that person in your head with everything that you do in marketing is really important. You can even give that person a name. So that way you can imagine talking to that person and selling to that person. And all the content that we're going to talk about today is about really trying to connect to that target person, to that target market, and make them your customer in the end. So what are some of the things that you think about when identifying your target market? What are the characteristics? There's demographics, so age, gender, geography, location. Currently, a lot of the target market, as far as I understand, from Moldova is still focused on Europe, because Asian travel is still not really picking up the same way. So think about the location of the place. Think about family status, single, married, kids, maybe it's friends traveling together, the income level, profession, kind of the style of person. as well as these travel styles, like what are their interests in terms of adventure, outdoors, city break, family activities, their travel style, group travel, luxury, budget, their values. This is becoming more and more important. Travelers are looking to companies that have similar values. Maybe it's connected to sustainability and environment, or perhaps it's connected to not so much religious, but like in terms of what are the values that I have, I want to stay in a place that has similar values or similar style as me. And then also, where is your target market doing their shopping and where do they hang out online? Are they hanging out entirely on Instagram? Are they making their purchases online? Are they going through OTAs, online travel agents? So to understand this, so that way you can try and connect with them at these different places. And I imagine, so here I have 3 different target markets. I have a family with several kids. I have me and my husband, so we're a couple, and we do a lot of hiking. So I kind of identified us as, you know, the couple in adventure. And then the bottom photo is a group of guys on a stag party. So a stag party is when a group of guys go off to celebrate, let's say, have a great party before a friend gets married. Now, I don't think this is so much of a thing in Chisinau yet, and I really hope it doesn't become one. But when I lived in Prague for 5 years, it was a really big thing. Like, we used to not go downtown during the weekends because we wanted to avoid these people. So, but they're a target market. They're a very serious target market. So I wanted to show kind of the difference. When you think about target markets, you're going to have different products and services and marketing depending upon who your target market is, meaning you're not going to have the same type of content and services if you're trying to appeal to a family with 3 kids than if you're trying to appeal with 5 guys who just want to drink beer. So this is the type of thing when I say, think about how your content and your services align with your target market. So specifically, here are some ideas of, like, when you think about what are your target market's questions and needs. If you're a family, you might be thinking of what are the things to do in Moldova with family, with toddlers, with children. I've done a lot of work on projects in Kyrgyzstan, and I would get emails from people saying, I really want to go, but is it safe for kids? Is it friendly for kids? And I'd always say, well, Kyrgyz love children. They'll do anything to try and make you comfortable, but there's no information about how to travel with kids in Kyrgyzstan, so people would get really anxious about it. So again, I'm not a parent, but I imagine many of you are, you want to make sure that you have things for your children to do, because otherwise you're not going to have a very good vacation if your children don't have things to do. So think about how your services and your content, if families are your target market, can focus on meeting those needs. For example, winery accommodation in Moldova for families. You know, which wineries are focused on having family rooms, which ones have pools and other activities. You know, for me, the adventure couple, we were focused on like the hikes in Moldova, where to go hiking, as well as where the wine tours were near Chisinau, as well as, you know, which wineries we could stay at in the central part of Moldova because they were near the hikes. So these are all the questions that, again, if you're focused on, let's say, more couples, maybe you also want to focus on romantic type, you know, romantic dinners or romantic activities, to think, what are those needs? What are those questions? And then we have the stag party. And they're going to be looking for things like best clubs in Chisinau, or best bars in Chisinau, or where the cheapest beer is in Chisinau, because they're mainly going to be staying in the city. So if you have a tour company that's focused on stag parties, I would be creating content that says, here are the best clubs, here are the best bars, and by the way, we can organize your trip for you. So it's always about thinking about how your services meet your target market, but then also how your content can help answer those questions that they're looking for and answer their needs, because you want to make it as easy and fun as possible for them to plan their trip. And before I go into, what travelers want to know and how that connects to your content, there's also something I wanted to remind regarding the international traveler and some assumptions about them. And the first one is assume that the international traveler knows nothing about Moldova. They might have an interest, they might have heard about Moldova, but they don't really know very much about any of the locations inside the country, what there is to do, the fact that there's this incredible lake and natural reserve in the south, that's the UNESCO biosphere. They don't know any of these things at the beginning. So make sure that you almost provide extra information. If you talk about a place like Lalova, let people know this is where Lalova is located and it's near other things, because Lalova, for me, coming from Berlin, it could be the south of the country, it could be the north of the country. So make sure that you provide information as to, don't assume that anyone knows where these places are or what makes them special, what makes Sipova Monastery special. You have to explain it to people so that way they get excited about it. Same with food. Anytime you're talking about food, make sure you give a description of what it is. Whether it's placenta or samale, all of these are normal and they're delicious to you. But as for me from America, I don't know what these dishes are. But when I get a description, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds good. I want to eat that. So again, provide the extra information, because assume that the traveler doesn't know anything. The other thing is that they know nothing about your company. And I say this because earlier in one of the first couple of journals, I did some reviews of websites and company websites, guest house websites, and the basic information of like who the company was and what they did often was really difficult to find. So assume that the traveler knows nothing about your company or your brand. Give them that information up front to make it easy for them to say, oh yeah, this is a tour company specializing in adventure. This is a guest house located in Orheveki that has family adventures or family activities. So make it easy because they don't know anything about you. Also, they have a short attention span. So if you don't get their attention quickly on the website, sometimes they leave. But also they want to make sure that they get the information that they need quickly and first. So sometimes there's a lot of beautiful kind of poetic language I've noticed on company websites, but it's really hard, or you have to go down, like you have to scroll down the page to find out the practical information. So try and combine that so that way travelers can get the practical and information that they're looking for easily, because they might not make it down the page if it's at the bottom. And also a lot of times, this isn't just international travelers, this is everyone. They don't read everything on the page. So make sure that the content is structured in a way with kind of clear headings. So that way, when they scan down, they can say, okay, this is the information I want. This information, not so necessary. If it's one big paragraph, they might be like, oh, that's too difficult for me to read. I'm going to move on to the next website. So make sure that when you're answering these questions, you're providing the information, it's easy to read and they can find the information quickly. The other thing is that they want a quick response. So if they do send you an email or Facebook message, they're probably going to expect a response within a day or two. Otherwise, they're going to think, okay, well, here's a website, but the company's kind of dead because they haven't responded to me. So another way to earn trust is to respond to their inquiries or respond to their messages quickly. And I say that because I had a couple of experiences during my trip where it was challenging to actually get responses. And I'm like, I want to stay with you. I just need the information and I need you to get back in touch with me. So make it easy and respond as quickly as you can. So getting back to what most travelers want and how this connects to your travel content and your websites. In the old days, a lot of times travelers would have a Lonely Planet or a guidebook. Nowadays, they're going online. So I think we all know that. I think that's one of the reasons why we're focused on online content. And the content on this slide might actually sound really basic, but I bring it up because I noticed, again, when I was doing the reviews earlier in the year, as well as my own kind of research on tourism in Moldova is sometimes this information was missing. And so I bring it up in terms of trying to think of all the basic needs of a traveler and how your website or how your content can help meet them or help answer those questions. So a traveler, they want to know where to go, where in the country to go. Maybe it's just Chisinau if they just focus on city, but hopefully they're also going to spend time in the countryside. They don't know anything about the country. So this is an opportunity to help them kind of shape their trip and to, again, shape their trip or influence their trip in a way that's going to focus on their interests and specific characteristics of that target market. What to do in terms of activities, trails, routes, festivals. Sometimes it's challenging finding out, okay, I know that there's this interesting site, let's say Sipova Monastery, but besides seeing the monastery, is there anything else I can do? Is there hikes? Is there a boat trip? So try and connect these attractions with activities around them, because that's what, we want to see things, but travelers also want to do and experience things. So providing that information. Where to sleep. This is also really important to make sure that they have a place to sleep at night near where they're, near the attraction, near the activity. And sometimes it is challenging, I found, to try and say, okay, I want accommodation near this place. And it's hard to find that. So people need to know kind of where they're going to sleep, where and what to eat. Getting back to the assumptions, I think a lot of guest houses in Moldova provide incredible homemade food, but you don't always see that on their websites. So as a traveler, if I don't know that the guest house offers food, I'm going to think, okay, well, there's no restaurant around in this village. What am I going to do? So make sure that that information is provided, because it's also a way to sell your services. Same with at wineries, to make sure that travelers know this isn't just about spending a night. This is about a full culinary experience. How to get there and get around. This focus is also on international as well as local transport. And I mentioned the international because, again, when I talk with my friends here, there's a lot of people who think Moldova is really far away. And I'm like, no, with Wizz Air, it's 2 hours. So when you think about your target market, if they're from the UK or if they're from Italy or if they're from a specific location, think about providing that information of the quickest or easiest way to get to Moldova so it seems easier and more accessible. When to go, so information about the seasons, best holidays, cost and cancellation policy. Cost is important, and I understand that costs maybe change, the price of things change, but maybe do a from this. And then cancellation policy is still quite important, because for a lot of travelers with pandemic, they're still looking for flexible cancellation. It's changing a little bit, but the last kind of studies that I saw indicate that having a clear cancellation policy can sometimes be the difference between someone booking and not booking. So the big question is, how can your website content help answer these key questions? And how can it make it easier to plan and book a trip? And ultimately for a traveler to have a better experience. So if you think of the traveler at the beginning of the bridge, and you think of your website, in terms of the online travel research, and Moldova at the end, how can your content and how can your website and how can providing and answering these questions help get them across the bridge so they actually come to Moldova? Now, one of the things to think about is, I mentioned first the assumption that don't assume that a traveler knows who you are, knows your brand, knows your company. So just really briefly, when you think about your homepage, I tend to think in terms of basic questions like who, what, why, how. So a lot of websites do this already, but I'm just mentioning this to maybe go back to your homepage and say, does my website do this? Remember to introduce who you are, that you're a guest house, that you're a winery, that you're a tour operator, where you're located, what you offer. And don't just focus on the basics. I offer rooms. Think about the full experience. We offer comfortable rooms. We offer home cooked meals. We offer a place to relax in nature. So introduce that what you offer immediately. Now, this is the tricky one. This is why you are unique or special. So what is it that makes, let's say, staying at your guest house or booking a tour with your company different or special? If you're a tour company, maybe it has to do with the expertise of your guides. Maybe it has to do with the languages. Maybe it has to do with your unusual itineraries. So think about, again, you're trying to catch the attention of the traveler. What makes you unique? Or in marketing speak, what's your unique selling proposition, your USP? And think about one way, I know that this is sometimes hard for people, but think about the comments or the feedback or the reviews or the recommendations that people have given you over the years. Think about those things and what are the characteristics that they bring up? Maybe it's the warm family feel, maybe it's the food, maybe it's the fact that you have an amazing playground and their kids were, engaged for 5 hours and the parents could have a great vacation. Like, think about what are the things that people say that they really enjoyed about staying with you or your company. And again, thinking about that target market, highlight what your services or your offers are that best meet them and that best address that needs. So for example, maybe it's family-friendly rooms, maybe it's hiking trails that are nearby and you could provide maps, or, for tour companies, maybe it's the style of tour, again, by style of target market in terms of maybe length of trip, or if you're focused on stag parties, maybe it's focused on the types of stag parties or the types of events. So put first and foremost, not everything, but put first and foremost, what are those offers that are best going to be of interest to your target market? You might have other services and offerings, but use that initial attention to kind of put your best, let's say, offers for your target market first. And then another thing is to think about, a lot of websites offer information on destinations within Moldova to visit, which is great. It provides an idea of like, okay, well, I can visit, Lake Beloi in the south, I can visit Orhiveki in the center, I can put this together in an itinerary. But one of the things that I found a bit hard to find when I was researching Moldovan tourism websites is what to actually do there. So for example, Lake Beloi is beautiful, incredible. And before that trip, I did a lot of research and I kept finding information about how big it was, how deep the water was, that it was, UNESCO biosphere, that there were all these birds that come through, it's a migration place. But I couldn't find information about what to actually do there. And once I visited, I realized, oh, there's 2 hiking trails. There's also 2 bird watching towers that are incredible. There's also an opportunity for boat rides, but in order to get that boat ride, you have to contact the reserve. All these things where I couldn't really find information on online. And if I was a tourist at that time, I probably would have been like, okay, I go to the lake and I leave. But providing, if you're a guest house, you can provide that information in a way that says, here are all the things you can do, or a tour company, and we can make it easier for you to do all these things. We could provide the transport, we could provide the boat. So it's also a chance to upsell. So again, when you think about talking about we're near this site, we're near this attraction, the historical information, the scientific information is important, but when you're thinking about travelers, think about what to do there. What are they going to experience, and how can you make it easy for them to experience that and have a great trip? And this gets back to this idea of the more travelers have comprehensive information online when they're doing their planning and their research, the more likely it is that they'll visit, but also there's a more likely chance that they might book more things or stay longer or engage more. So because they will trust the website or the destination. So if they have that information in advance, they start that relationship, or they start that, planning to say, oh, maybe I need 3 days there instead of just 1. Now for accommodation and wineries, again, what I'd like the participants to do is, if you're an accommodation or a winery, or especially a winery offering accommodation, go back to your website and just see, does your website answer these questions? And I say where located. Of course, your website is going to have an address. But for me, do I know where Lalova is? Do I know where Veleni is? Is it in North Moldova? Is it in South Moldova? So let people understand where your place is in relation to other areas in the country and other attractions. What to do nearby. Guest houses, I think, in Moldova are incredible. Same with the winery stays. They're kind of an experience of itself. But in order for people to stay longer, there needs to be other attractions and things to do nearby. So provide that information. If it's hiking, maybe say we have these incredible hiking trails nearby. We can provide you a map. Provide the map online so people can start planning and thinking. Wine tours, we have, we are in this guest house in this location, but we have 6 wineries around. We can help you organize wine tours. So start getting, putting that information out there so your visitors start thinking, oh yeah, I could spend several days there, or, oh, this is a more interesting place than I thought. As well as what to do at the accommodation. So many of the guest houses and wineries have really invested in incredible features like the hammocks, the jacuzzis, or the hot tubs, I guess they are, the gazebos, so maybe you want to say and start putting ideas in people's head. We've got the swimming pool, we've got gazebos where you can go wine tasting at sunset. We have playgrounds, so your children will be occupied, as well as we have animals your children can play with. So start, again, to say what people can actually do there and provide all the details, because again, people want to know, am I just going to sleep there, or is there something more interesting that I could do there? Same with food. I mean, the food in Moldova is incredible. And some accommodation websites hardly mention it. And this is, I think, a really big selling point, especially, the home cooked meals, as well as the winery restaurants. You have the traditional meals, as well as the more, let's say, continental European that are specifically paired with the wines. This is a really big sell. Sell it up. It's good. Now, also, again, this is accommodation. So the room features, is it private bathroom, family friendly? Are there family rooms? Price, credit card. This was something that as a traveler, I was like, okay, I actually took out all this cash in Chisinau because I didn't know if anyone would accept credit card outside the city. So this type of information allows travelers to plan in advance. And it makes them more comfortable. Like, if I can I use my credit card? If I need to cancel, what's the policy? So all this information builds that trust. And for tour operators, it's a similar thing in terms of answering the key questions that a traveler might have, or the needs, and how you stand out. So I call it itinerary plus. Having a basic itinerary is required, it's necessary, which is like where you're going, your attractions, your activities, but really focus on those unique experiences and your specialties. So that way your itinerary maybe doesn't look as similar to others. Another thing that I think is, especially from Moldovan tour operators, which is a benefit, or let's say piece of advice, is explain the key benefits of taking a tour with you. And when I think about it, I think of like, it's no headaches. Like everything's organized for me. You have the special local contacts, you have all the connections. And I would maybe position it as like taking a tour with my company gives you special access. Travelers like to have that like brag worthy. They like to say, yeah, I met this local winemaker and we had this special private tour. So think about all the reasons why taking a tour with your company, whether it's a day tour or multi-day tour, provides that special access or provides some things that they wouldn't otherwise get if they were just planning on their own. Plus, it makes it easier. The accommodation, logistics, all that's taken care of. Also, make sure on your website you have information on how to get to Moldova. Don't assume that people know this. They might be searching for tours and then think, oh, it's really far away. But if you provide that information, it's like, oh, actually 3 hours, that's not bad. 2 hours, that's not bad. Safety, this is something I think that's relevant right now with the war in Ukraine. It's worth mentioning because if you don't talk about it, people will get suspicious. So I would be open about, here's the situation. It's safe to travel. Here are links to other travel information, or let's say safety information, and say we're happy to answer any questions. Again, this is about building the trust. And then, of course, information about the price of tour, how to book. Is it safe to pay by credit card? And the reason why I mention this is giving them that confidence, like, yes, we're using an international booking platform, it's safe. So one of the things, I'm going to go quickly through the last slide so we have some time for questions, is so these, I gave you a lot of practical things to think about for your website, but I also want to kind of put this, let's say, mindset of how the travel content, how your websites, your travel content can inspire and inform and sell. And so this is just a sample from G Adventures. They're a large Canadian adventure tour companies. They focus on small groups. And their content very much combines this. So they usually have a title. This is for their blog, so it's not a specific tour, but their tour titles are similar. They usually have a title that's kind of inspiring. It gets someone dreaming, like, I'm thinking about Europe, but I don't know where to go. So your extraordinary European adventure. But then they have the summary, which is informing, like, this is what you're going to get on this page. You're going to get a curated list of great ideas of things to do of places to go in Europe and the tours that are going to get you there. Then they go back to the inspiring, which is it focuses on your target market. They have a lot of younger travelers who want, let's say, wine, food, adventure experiences. So again, it's meeting those needs of the target market of, like, how am I going to have this incredible experience that I get to tell to all my friends? But then it breaks it down into kind of how to match those interests, those travel desires with destinations. So again, it's inspiring, but it's also informing, it's practical. And then they provide links to all the tours that match that desire. So it's trying to do this kind of inspire and inform. And at the same time, you're also soft selling, because you're saying, well, if you want these experiences, we can help you. Here you go. So when you're thinking about kind of website content, think about this combination. And for structure, these are the two technical slides to think about, is a clear and informative page title. Because again, people have short attention span, so they want something clear and easy. An introduction, tell them at the top what the page is about and what they're going to get. What's the benefit for them to continue reading? Because if they don't know what information is on the page, then they might just click to the next page on Google. So let them know, like, what's the payoff? What are they going to get? Use titles, subtitles. This is, again, the idea that people don't read everything. So they're looking for places to kind of their eyes to catch, like, this is the information I want. And I mention this because I've seen a lot of websites all over the world where there's great information, but it's in one long paragraph. And I'm like, I'm not going to get through that. So make it easy for people to find the information they need. Make sure that your content actually answers all the questions, provides, as I said, even more information maybe than they asked for, their needs, their target market needs, like, what are the obstacles? How can I provide information to overcome that? Link to other pages on your website, whether it's other tours or maybe it's information about the food. Again, the idea is to keep them on the website exploring. So that way, again, it builds this trust and hopefully they eventually book with you. Call to action. Don't assume that the traveler knows what they're supposed to do. So make sure that you have a clear button or something that's like, reserve your room, book here, get information. Sometimes I think people are polite. They don't feel like, oh, I don't want to be too forward. But again, don't assume travelers know anything. Make it clear that you tell them, if you want more, or if you want to book with us, here's what you do. And then images, quality images is important. Make sure that the traveler can imagine themselves there, like having an amazing time on vacation. So kind of engaging, immersive experiences. And this is a reminder from, I think, Journal 3, which is on-page SEO. So this is just a reminder that all of the things that we just talked about that are good for the traveler when they're doing the research is also good for search engine optimization, because Google reads from the top down. So if you have a clear title, you have clear subheadings that say what the page is about, you have a clear introduction so Google knows what it's about and the information is comprehensive, it's going to like that. And it's going to say, oh, that's what this page is about. I'm going to rank it higher. So all the answering and structuring things to make it easier for travelers also makes it good for Google. And as we talked about again, this is a review from the previous one, Google likes it when you answer a question comprehensively. They want to make sure that the people who are searching get the answers and the answers and the information that they're searching for, because they're always trying to match the searcher's intent, like what they're searching for, with the information. And so if they see that a searcher, a traveler, clicks off immediately, then they're like, that content isn't so useful. So the more you're able to, again, understand the needs and the questions, and create that content or add content to your pages, then that will make Google happy. And I also want to remind you that it takes time for Google to scan new content. So the best time to create content is now for the future, because you might not get an immediate, bump in search results, but over time, if the content is quality, if it uses these best practices of clear titles, subheadings, comprehensive information, it will increase. And so when we're thinking about international tourism, or regional or domestic tourism for next year, because we're always preparing for the next summer season, think about what you can do now in the wintertime for the next year. And ultimately, ironically, I guess I should say, even after I suggested this topic, Google came out with their last big algorithm update at the end of August, which is called helpful content. So the idea is it's meant to focus on people first content, as opposed to content that's been written for search engine optimization. So they're really trying to focus on what information is helpful, what really helps the searcher, the travelers, like how can the information solve their problems or answer their questions. And so these are the questions that they asked. I won't go through them because you'll get access to these slides, but I just wanted to emphasize it all connects together, that the more we help the traveler, the more it also helps Google or a search engine. And so I'm going to leave you with an exercise to think about your websites, but then also to think about what are the top 10 questions that travelers ask you, like either during the booking process or maybe during their stay, like they've booked a room and then they've arrived at your doorstep with their suitcases and they ask, okay, what do I do? So what are the top 10 questions that travelers ask you? And then to think, are answers to all those questions on your website? And if they aren't, is it possible to either add it to current pages or to create new pages for that website? And if it is on your website and travelers aren't finding the information, then how can you make it easier for them to find? Maybe it's moving it to a different part of the website or adding more links so people can find it. And so this is just kind of an exercise for you to think about over the holiday, or not holidays, but when you're preparing for the next season, is because I know I get annoyed answering the same questions over and over by email or messenger. So think about what people are asking you. And if that information isn't available, how can you put it on your website to make it easier for them to find you? And so ultimately, in terms of the summary, is the role of quality online travel content. It inspires travelers to visit. It gives them the information that they want, which makes it easy to book, makes it easy to happen. So it basically makes that trip happen easily. And ultimately, inspiration without practical information equals dreaming tourists who are still at home as opposed to customers. So the idea is to use online travel content to inspire, inform, and ultimately encourage that dreamer to become a traveler. So that's it for me. I realize I think it's 10 o'clock already, so I don't know if there's time for questions. So I apologize. I get excited about these topics.
No worries at all. No worries. It's good that we have many things to communicate, which, let's say, were not communicated before during the previous sessions. So basically, we can announce the Q&A session open. Dacă dorește cineva să adreseze întrebări chiar și în limba română, vă rugăm să nu vă rușinați, avem și servicii de traducere. Puteți să adresați întrebările și în chat. I had at some point a question, so maybe while the audience is still figuring out what to ask you.
Yep.
At some point I was wondering if there is a startup in the tourism industry, and generally they try to experiment at the beginning, and they are still not having a defined target market audience, or maybe they are trying to identify which is the one which is the most, let's say, profitable, or which is the one which best aligns with the services that they provide. What would you recommend in this case? Should the company create content and double it to more target markets, or should they still stick to one or two segments and not overcrowd, let's say, the website or the social media channels?
Very good question. I would say first would be to do some market research to see, let's say they have maybe to begin with 5 target markets. If it's possible to do some market research to find out the size of those target markets, meaning that the size and the trends. So for example, if we're talking about travel, there's more trends, for example, for families traveling together after the pandemic, or there's more trends for friends traveling together after the pandemic. So to think about, okay, do the market research to see where the trends are and to see if there's any data on the size of those markets. And then also ultimately, if you think about their core services and products, what's really the best fit? Because the same service doesn't really meet everyone's needs. So to think about what's the core service or product, and then which is the best fit for, let's say, 2 target markets. But those target markets should also be informed by some market research as well. And I would probably focus on really high quality content for those, let's say 1 to 2, let's say 2 target markets, because they can also connect. You know, a lot of times activities focused, let's say for couples or friends, they can kind of overlap. But then constantly be getting feedback from asking, you know, their customers, or looking at the data in terms of, is the information or is the website ranking? Are people booking? Trying to find out if it doesn't work. Is the problem their target market, their services, or their content? But if you try and do a little bit for, let's say, 5 target markets, I think you won't really be able to analyze the content very well, because it'll be too spread out.
And in terms of languages, what would you recommend? Should the company straight away decide the content to be written in a specific language and then to double it in a second target market's language, or should it be on the same page? Should it be in Romanian, let's say, and in English at the same time?
I would have the first one, which is to have specific content for each language or each target market. So, and it also makes it difficult sometimes in that, you know, if we're talking about Romanians and Moldovans might have different questions or needs than an American or a German. So it might not be an exact translation. But at the same time, I think if it's all on the same page, it makes it a bit confusing for the visitor, the website visitor. It also makes it a bit confusing, I think, for Google. So to have separate pages and separate language, each language has its own, let's say, page or own version.
Thank you. Your questions always make some confusing situations more clear.
Well, thank you.
Let me check in the meantime if we have any questions, on if anyone wants to directly ask Audrey. I think we have Ms. Strelciuc. Doamna Strelciuc, doriți să spuneți ceva, probabil, corect?
I see a question from, yeah.
Eu, în primul rând, vreau să-i mulțumesc foarte mult, Andrew Scott, pentru această prezentare extraordinară. Eu am făcut notiții, cred că 90%, fiindcă suntem la etapa de creare a site-ului și toate sugestiile au fost practice, din experiența doamnei în calitate de călător și turist, inclusiv în Republica Moldova. Deci sunt foarte relevante toate sugestiile și recomandările. Acum vreau să întreb următorul lucru. Deci, în mare parte, noi am vorbit despre sugestiile pentru un site individual, pentru o companie privată. După cum știe Andrew, că a fost la noi la Sud, deci noi avem clusterul turistic care conectează mai mulți beneficiari, mai multe tipuri de companii, instituții. Și întrebarea este dacă ar putea Andrew un pic să ne vorbească cum este mai bine să promovezi astfel de tipuri de trasee. Cum ele trebuie să fie, digitale, fiindcă ele conectează mai mulți tipuri de operatori. Dacă există careva experiență și careva recomandări în acest sens. Mulțumesc anticipat.
Great question. So two different ideas for that, or two different approaches, but they can also be combined on the, let's say, destination website. One is to provide all the information for the route for an independent traveler. Because someone who is researching, even they're going to want to know, okay, here are the routes, let's say the cycling routes and maybe a culture route. And here are the different stops. Here's a map, and make sure you have the map digitally. So whether it's, so the GPX routes are there, or whether you have a Google map, or if it's a hiking route, use Wikiloc or one of the hiking routes, but then also provide all the information, again, of what a traveler needs to undertake that route, which will benefit all the different beneficiaries. So where are all the places that they can eat? Where are all the places that they can sleep? What are all the activities? In the South, there's some incredible opportunities to visit artisans. So where are those artisans located? And again, how to make it easy to visit or how to make it easy to reserve. So provide all of that information. And when you provide that information, make sure that you're linking out to all the individual businesses. So that way the traveler, if he or she wants, can book directly. At the same time, also offer an opportunity, if there is a tour company or if there are companies locally that offer this, offer the opportunity to book that as the tour with a company. So it's kind of, you can do it on your own and maybe customize your route and itinerary. But at the same time, if you want a local expert to organize it for you so you don't have to worry about food or sleeping or translation, we have these great recommendations of local operators or local guides who can help you. So I would focus first on collecting all the information and and again, think of all the questions that a traveler might ask or might think about, and put it on the website, the destination website. Because even if that traveler decides to book a tour, they still want to have the confidence, like, yeah, this is a route, or this is an experience that I want. So I hope that answered your question. And again, just also when you're doing social media, this is a cluster, so the idea is just to constantly tag and support each other. So that way, everyone is working together to create these incredible, let's say, routes or experiences. Did that answer your question, Sylvia? Yeah. Yeah, okay. And yes. I see, yeah.
Și mai am o întrebare către Andrew. Era în prezentare o fotografie de la podul de la Văleni. Podul care e foarte interesant și vreau să întreb pe Andrew, este o fotografie pusă în sens pozitiv sau în sens așa de învățare, fiindcă el chiar e destul de periculos? Așa o părere personală. Mersi.
And I think Ina would agree that it's quite dangerous. She had challenge getting across it.
You don't want to know my feelings.
So again, okay, this is maybe an interesting story. This maybe depends on the target market. So I saw that bridge and I was like, oh, cool. Can we cross it? And I started walking across.
I haven't said the same, so I'm a different target market.
So yeah, so that's maybe a funny story is I saw that and I saw it as like an interesting, I asked if it's safe. And I was advised that it is safe, you know, be careful, but it is safe. And so my initial reaction was, I thought it was interesting and I wanted to see it. However, as Ina experienced, she didn't have that same reaction. So my feeling with that bridge would be, in order to make it, let's say, more comfortable for everyone, it has an interesting story. I think it should be looked at in terms of real safety. Like, it doesn't need to be rebuilt to make it beautiful, and because you also want to keep some of that authentic, the story. But I would put a sign and information about the safety right next to the bridge. So that way people feel comfortable crossing. Or if they don't feel comfortable crossing, they understand that there's another way to go around. But yeah, I thought it was a cool bridge, but not everyone does. So yeah.
I tried to share for the audience so they understand the bridge we're talking about.
Yeah. So, okay, I think there's two more, or there's one more question that was in the chat from Andre, which was, could you say what are the tourism trends after the pandemic, especially related with our country? Great question, and I'll try not to talk too long, but I do focus quite a lot on trying to keep up with the different trends. Again, mainly focused on international markets, but specifically European, because I think for the European and North American, but especially European for the, let's say, next few years is probably the main target market for Moldova. Some of the trends that I think are related to Moldova that I think Moldova could benefit from are, there is more of a focus from travelers on, let's say, lesser known, less crowded, undiscovered destinations. They want to go somewhere new or different. So I think there's an opportunity there for Moldova, as well as, let's say, authentic culture. And that's a word that gets overused a lot in tourism marketing, but I'm noticing that, let's say, it's coming up more in some surveys where travelers are looking for a connection to culture, and perhaps, again, something new. And I think there's an opportunity there for Moldova. Food and wine is also another trend. And I think, again, the opportunity for Moldova is because it's emerging. People don't know very much about Moldovan food, and wine, but, you know, the most recent winner of the best red wine in the world at the Brussels competition was from Moldova. So there's an opportunity to also to build on this, as well as the idea that there's now, I think it's 10 wineries with accommodation and 20 wineries with restaurants and 40 wineries with wine tours, to show that the investment in wine now makes Moldova a really interesting wine destination. Also nature, that's still continuing post-pandemic, where a lot of people are focused on outdoor activities. Let's say hiking and cycling has become quite popular. In many parts of Europe, the natural parks have been overwhelmed by people. So the focus on adventure, soft adventure, not hardcore like mountain climbing, but like soft adventure where normal people like me can do it, is also a trend. And the other thing is sustainability. A lot of time, there's been more and more research done that whether people are actually acting on it, sustainability is in their head when they're beginning to search and make decisions. So they're looking at places that are caring for the environment, that are also preserving culture. And so I think this is also an opportunity for Moldova. And in terms of sustainability, it's also not just the environment, which is obviously very important, but it's also about the socioeconomy. So for example, the rural guest houses, the wineries, the different tourism businesses, they hire local people, they work with local providers. So emphasizing all of these things about how tourism benefits the community, benefits local people, benefits the environment, that's also something that people are searching for. And when I usually write up a newsletter kind of related to these, but I'll add some links to some recent studies on kind of some of the trends coming out of the pandemic, if that would be useful. So I hope that answered your question, Andre. Okay. Are there any other questions before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday? Oh. Okay, another question. What do you think about medical tourism with cultural tourism, like Turkish companies doing that with other countries like the UK? Difficult question, because to be honest, does Moldova have, and I have to admit, when I think of Turkey as a medical tourism place, I know some people who have gone there for dental work and for plastic surgery. I know people who've gone to Romania, who used to go to Romania for dental work. I think it would be a long road to focus on medical tourism, because you'd have to basically develop the reputation and develop that trust. So it's possible, but it would probably take a lot of marketing money.
And a lot of awareness, I believe, which we do not really have it.
Yeah, it would take a lot of awareness, and also a lot of like very strategic marketing and advertising, again, to get to that target market. So I don't know as much about Moldova's medical tourism or dental care, but unless it has a strong reputation already, for example, Thailand and Mexico, like lots of Americans go to Mexico because it's cheaper, but and they know that the quality is good. I don't know, I don't have that sense. I'm in Germany. I don't hear of people going to Moldova for dental care. So I don't know if that reputation is there.
I believe the dental tourism is a particular niche tourism segment for Chisinau. And it's deriving from the fact that we have the diaspora in regions like Italy, Spain, and this word of mouth advertising has served its role in recommending Italian citizens, Spanish citizens to come to Moldova for these dental procedures. So basically, we haven't allocated any marketing for this, but it has come naturally due to diaspora's word of mouth. Okay, so that's a great start. But if it was meant to be let's say, a real strategic focus, it would require, yes, very targeted advertising, and I think actually quite a bit of money to get it to that level. But for the diaspora who are making recommendations, it's possible. I mean, this maybe sounds strange, but maybe on the dentist websites that are popular with their Italian friends, start offering information of, cultural tours or other ways to relax in the country, and start thinking about it as a package. But it probably would come from the dentist it'd probably come from the word of mouth still. So let's see, there's a couple other questions. Okay, so Emil, in terms of SEO digital marketing, it's highly competitive market. You have to invest more, taking into account other wealthier players. Could you please provide insight how Moldova could stand out? Very good question. One of the things I would suggest is to take a look again at, I think it was the journal number 3, and we'll add a link to it, that looks at how to use different keyword tools to find out what travelers are searching for when it comes to Moldova, and creating content around those key terms, those keywords, and also to think about how, again, to structure the website pages, like I mentioned here, with really clear titles, clear subheadings, what we call on-page SEO, which allows travelers to find the information they need. It also allows Google to understand more easily from the top down what the page and the information is about. The reality is, when it comes to travel, the big players like TripAdvisor, Get Your Guide, Viator, they spend a lot of money on SEO. At the same time, a lot of travelers, when they're searching, they it's almost like they're blind to them, because they know they're going to appear at the top, because they're always at the top. So there's an opportunity for Moldovan tour companies or Moldovan websites. Same with booking.com, it always appears at the top. But there is an opportunity for Moldovan websites to appear below it. And I think
because there isn't so much information about Moldova, there actually is an opportunity there. But the thing is to understand what are travelers searching for, like what information are travelers searching for about Moldova, and how to create content that brings them in, builds that trust, and then also allows them to sell. But I'll try and add something about this into the kind of newsletter that goes out. And in terms of providing insight of how Moldova could stand out, I think it also goes back to connecting with these trends coming out of the pandemic, whether it's nature, culture.
I'm sorry, I will disconnect to 1 second, please. I apologize.
That's okay. And so connecting so you said long tail niche words, but then also thinking like a traveler. And sometimes the terms that a company might think of are not the terms that a traveler uses to search. So that's where using tools like SEMrush, and again, I'll put links to that in the newsletter, are really useful, because you kind of have to take off your head. You have to take off your hat as like a tour company and put on your hat as a traveler. And they might be searching for words that are different than what you think about. So it's finding that connection. Like, for example, when I search, I say what to do, but when I go into a keyword, when I go to an SEO tool, things to do always has much higher search terms than me. So I have to take off my hat as Audrey and put on my hat as a normal person. There's also a question from Patricia: how best to communicate online for clients for a city hotel when most bookings come from OTAs and not from your website? Great question. There's always an opportunity to ask if you can help. Like, ask if there's anything that you can do to help make their stay in Chisinau more enjoyable. If they want information about wineries, if they want information about wine tours, if they have interest in day trips from Chisinau. Don't be like, this is called a soft sell, meaning it's not like a full-on sell, but I appreciate it when I actually do use booking.com a lot. I apologize, but it makes my life easier many times. And I appreciate it when I get messages from the accommodation saying, we look forward to welcoming you. Is there anything we can do to help with your stay, provide information about other things in the area? So, and that might also be a way to, if you're selling tours, that's great. Otherwise, you might have a partnership with someone else selling tours, or just to, create that connection. So I think that might be it.
Yep.
Okay, Patricia. Okay, glad I answered that. And some people might not respond, but other people might be like, you know what, I'm so interested in Moldovan food. Can you provide some recommendations or maybe a tour? You never know, but it's always worth sending a note and asking how you can help. So I think we might be done with the questions at this point.
Yes, we officially declare the Q&A session closed.
Yes, thank you for your patience and staying for so long. Appreciate that.
And a big thank you for the interpreters who have stayed up until now with us.
Yes, and I hope I didn't go too fast. Audience. Yes,
it's been great.
Okay.
Thank you, Audrey, once again for all your contribution, for being so involved into discovering the Moldova as you have never seen it, maybe, and maybe as even the other international travelers do not see it yet. Big thanks for our strategic partner for supporting us and for supporting to continue the Antrim Tourism Intelligence journals, since we have thought that the fourth will be the last one. Thanks to the audience dedication and interest, we have continued it with the partner support. If there are any questions in the meantime, maybe people get some reflection time after the session, feel free to address the questions at office around antrim.com.
Antrim.md, right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm sure people know. And thanks to all the participants. I realized this was a long session, so I appreciate you staying, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.